While I was immobilized post-surgery, my parents took my card and flew first class to Greece. "You weren't using it," my dad joked. My sister said, "Don't be selfish." So I did something with it. I filed charges, contacted the resort, and blocked their names from my accounts forever. Their final day at the spa interrupted by hotel security. 2 days later, while they were returning to the US in hysterics, I was waiting for them with a lawyer. I never thought the day would come when I'd stop trusting my own family and start trusting my relatives instead. But it did, and it came hard. If you asked me a year ago who had my back, I would have said my parents and my 2 younger sisters without blinking. I helped both my sisters pay their rent last spring when they were struggling. I even loaned my parents money during a rough patch. I didn't keep tabs. I didn't expect anything back. That's what you do for family, right? I never imagined they'd turn around and rob me. After my surgery, I was out cold for the better part of a week. Complicated leg fracture, the kind that screws your independence and hands you a bedpan and a nurse's button instead. The only 2 people who really showed up for me were my cousins, Eric and Madison. They brought clothes from home, kept my phone charged, made sure I had food I could actually eat. I barely trusted anyone, but I gave them access to my bank card just in case I needed anything essential. I wish I could say it was paranoia that made me hide my wallet from my parents, but I didn't. I should have. They were around for the first 2 days. Took a few photos, said the right things, then poof, gone. No calls, no visits. My sisters didn't even text. I was too groggy from the painkillers to care. But it got weird when Eric and Madison stopped coming too. I didn't hear from them for 3 days. Then one afternoon, I woke up from another pain nap and saw my phone blowing up. Dozens of banking alerts, purchases in Greece, luxury hotel bookings, flight confirmations. I thought it was a scam at first, but it was my car, the one I gave only to my cousins who are nowhere near Europe. I scrolled down further. More charges. Spa treatments, expensive dinners, a boat rental. Then I opened Facebook. There they were. My mom and dad drinking by the ocean. My sisters posing in a rooftop infinity pool. My dad actually commented on one of the photos. "When your son isn't using his card," man shrugging face with tears of joy. My sister chimed in with, "Don't be selfish. You're stuck in bed anyway." I don't remember the next 5 minutes. I just remember shaking, not from the pain meds, from something deeper. Betrayal doesn't feel like a stab. Feels like a door slamming shut in your chest. I FaceTimed Eric. He picked up on the second ring. He looked exhausted. They hadn't visited because they were dealing with something themselves. My parents had apparently called them, said I didn't need anything anymore, and taken the card from the apartment. Eric had figured something was up, but didn't want to overstep. He and Madison were already tracking the charges, too, getting ready to talk to me when I woke up. They were furious, more furious than I was, and that says a lot. That night, we made a plan. I filed a fraud complaint. We gathered screenshots of everything, the charges, the Facebook posts, the timestamps. Madison called a lawyer she knew from work, and within 12 hours, he was in my hospital room with a notepad and a recorder. We called the resort in Kinas. I explained that the card was stolen and the charges were fraudulent. The manager was surprisingly cooperative. Maybe the evidence helped. Maybe they just didn't like freeloaders. Either way, the resort locked my parents out of their suite the next morning. Their key cards didn't work. Their luggage was moved to the lobby and they still had 3 days left in Greece. I canceled the return flights. My parents had to book new ones out of pocket. No first class this time, just middle seats and overpriced last-minute fares. When they landed in the US, probably thinking they'd smooth talk their way out of everything, they didn't expect to find me sitting up, clean-shaven, alert, and flanked by my lawyer, my uncle, and both cousins. I didn't ask why. I already knew. The first thing my dad said when he walked into my hospital room was, "You weren't using it anyway." He actually laughed. My mom looked like she was ready to cry, and my sisters couldn't even make eye contact. My youngest one, Lucy, mumbled something about not meaning for it to get out of hand. But it wasn't just out of hand. It was theft, blatant, premeditated, and heartless. And they didn't just spend money. They left me alone, immobile, barely able to get to the bathroom without help, all while pretending I didn't exist. My lawyer, Mr. Kane, didn't let them talk for long. He explained calmly, precisely that they were under investigation for unauthorized use of funds, fraud, misuse of medical assets. He handed them a document outlining the legal steps we were taking, and another one with the first wave of evidence, banking statements, screenshots, and certified letters already filed with the resort and my bank. My parents tried to laugh it off at first, said we were being dramatic, said it was all just a misunderstanding. But Eric had receipts, literal receipts, every transaction. My dad had even used my card to buy cologne from the Athens airport. My mom ordered a silk robe. They thought I was asleep while all this happened. They waited for the perfect time. Over the next 72 hours, the fallout began. I was discharged early from the hospital thanks to the help of my Uncle Eric's dad, who had a spare bedroom and had already set up space for me. I moved in with them that same day. They had a ramp, a medical recliner, and a full meal waiting. The difference between them and my parents couldn't have been clearer. The next day, a formal lawsuit was filed. Fraudulent use of personal funds, emotional distress, and reimbursement for legal fees. Total claim $22,800. My parents panicked. Suddenly, I was getting texts every few hours. My mom asked to talk as a family. Lucy wrote that she didn't realize how serious it was. My other sister, Grace, just sent a question mark. My dad radio silence, probably waiting for this to blow over like everything else always had. Only it wasn't going to blow over. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. I didn't say a word to them. No contact, nothing. Eric and Madison handled communication through the lawyer. I focused on recovery, spent most of my days doing light therapy, reading case updates, and trying to wrap my head around the fact that the people who were supposed to protect me had turned into opportunists the moment I couldn't walk. The worst part, it didn't surprise me as much as it should have. But that wasn't the end. One afternoon, about 5 days after the initial blow-up, I checked my account again, just the habit at that point, and saw a fresh charge. $300 withdrawn from an ATM I didn't recognize. I hadn't given my cousins any more access since I canceled the card, and no one else should have had it. That's when the call came from Eric. He sounded tense. He and Madison had found something out, something they weren't sure how to tell me. They were the ones who took the money not to steal it. Not in the same way my parents had. They said it was for me, something I need soon. But they hadn't asked. They hadn't told me. And they'd done it right after helping me shut everything down. I couldn't speak for a full minute. Because now, even the 2 people who had stood by me had taken something. Even if it wasn't malicious, even if they swore they had a reason, it was still a betrayal. And it reopened something that hadn't even started healing yet. I had no idea what to think anymore. That night, I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, hearing Eric's voice in my head on loop. It was for you. You'll understand soon. But he didn't explain. Madison didn't either. They just kept saying to trust them. Trust them. I felt like I was losing my mind. The one backup plan I had, the one solid piece of ground under me had cracked. Not shattered like my parents' betrayal, but fractured. And now I couldn't tell if I was surrounded by people trying to help or people who only helped until it cost them something. I texted Eric and told him I wanted the money back in the account by morning. No conversation, no excuses. To their credit, it was there when I woke up. I still didn't ask what it was for. I didn't care anymore. That one move, no matter how well-intentioned, drew a line and they'd crossed it. So I froze them out too. Didn't respond to messages. Kept my lawyer in the loop. Talked only to my uncle, who seemed to understand that I needed space. The court date was getting closer, and my parents had now switched tactics. They weren't angry anymore. They were desperate. Pleading emails, voicemails full of regret. My mom even showed up at my uncle's doorstep once. She brought a pie. A damn pie. Like this was Thanksgiving and we were just a family with a little tension. My uncle sent her away. Meanwhile, Mr. Kane was pulling together a case strong enough to rattle even the most experienced judge. Between the digital evidence, the statements from the resort, the financial records, and the fact that I was in a hospital bed when all of this went down, it was open and shut. He said I could go for jail time. I said, no, just the maximum fine? reimbursement, and public record of the suit. That was enough. But the real twist came 2 days before the court hearing. Madison came over alone, said she needed to explain something in person. I didn't want to let her in, but my uncle did. She sat across from me like she was terrified. Turns out the $300, it was to pay someone. A guy who'd been following me online for months. Someone I'd argued with in a gaming forum last year. He found out I was in the hospital and was threatening to leak personal info and spam my phone, even show up to prove a point. Eric and Madison paid him to disappear. Not out of fear, out of protection. And they didn't tell me because they didn't want to stress me while I was healing. It was real. There were screenshots, chat logs, even a photo the guy had taken of the hospital parking lot. They didn't want to go to the cops unless it got worse. They handled it quietly, quickly, and I felt sick because I doubted them because I'd assumed the worst. Because betrayal makes you suspicious of everyone, even the ones who drag you out of hell. I apologized. They did too. For not telling me sooner. For making it seem like they went behind my back. We cleared it up. We made peace. And on the morning of the hearing, I rolled into court in a wheelchair, flanked by Eric, Madison, my uncle, and Mr. Kame. My parents sat across from me, their expressions hollow. My sisters didn't even show up. The verdict was swift. They were ordered to pay back every penny, plus a fine, plus court and legal fees, over 30 grand in total. Their credit was about to take a permanent hit. And their reputation that took the biggest blow. I didn't feel satisfaction, just silence, because something deeper had been lost, and that wasn't coming back. It's wild how fast something as heavy as betrayal can start to feel normal, like you just absorb it. After the court hearing, after they were ordered to pay everything back with interest, I didn't even feel angry anymore. I just felt distant, like I was watching them from another life. I stayed at my uncle's house. At first, I told myself it was temporary, just until I could walk without the crutches, until I finished physical therapy. But weeks passed, then months, and the idea of going back to my parents' house started to feel absurd. It wasn't home anymore. It was just a building where people who used me lived. They made their payments late every time. First, it was a bank error, then a technical issue, then just silence. Eventually, the court added more fines. My lawyer didn't even need to lift a finger. The system was doing the job for us. That's when everything started unraveling on their end. My dad was let go from his job. Budget cuts, according to a family friend. My mom picked up work at some local clothing store, folding jeans under fluorescent lights. Lucy couldn't afford her rent anymore, so she moved back into the chaos. Grace was the loudest about it all, posting cryptic complaints online about toxic family members and fake lawsuits. She never said my name, but everyone who knew us knew. I didn't feel smug. Honestly, I felt numb, like I was watching karma run its course, and all I could do was nod. Meanwhile, my life, quiet and steady, kept moving. I focused on rehab. I went back to my freelance design work. I started building a budgeting app for people who had gone through financial betrayal. Real niche, I know, but it helped. Madison helped test it. Eric got a friend involved who worked in tech. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were building something. That's when the phone rang. It was Lucy. First time I'd heard her voice since the court hearing. She was crying. Said Mom had collapsed in the kitchen and was taken to the hospital. Stress, the doctor said. High blood pressure, maybe more. She said things were falling apart at home. They were behind on bills. Grace had stopped helping. Dad pawned off his watch and a few electronics. They didn't know what to do. She asked if I could help just until they got back on their feet. And for a moment I wanted to hang up. This was the same girl who told me not to be selfish while they sipped mojitos and grease on my dime. The same girl who ghosted me while I was bedbound and in pain. And now suddenly, I was supposed to be the responsible one again. But then I heard it in her voice. Fear. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel hate either. I felt a weird kind of clarity. I realized I didn't want revenge. I'd already gotten it and it hadn't fixed anything. What I wanted was control. I wanted to decide what kind of person I was going to be, not out of reaction to them, but on my own terms. So, I didn't send money, but I did call the hospital and speak with the billing department. made sure they wouldn't be denied care. I called a local nonprofit and gave them my parents' address anonymously. They help with groceries and utilities for families in crisis. That was enough. I wasn't going to let them sink, but I wasn't throwing them a rope either. When I told Madison and Eric what I'd done, they didn't judge me. They just nodded. Madison said something that stuck with me. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't about who deserves it. I'd made my choice, not to be like them, not to turn bitter, not to forget but to be better. What I didn't expect was what came next. 3 weeks after the verdict, a letter showed up at my uncle's house. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar. Slanted. Meet my mom's. I didn't open it at first, just stared at it, trying to decide if I even wanted to know what was inside. I'd finally started sleeping through the night without waking up angry. My routine was steady. I was walking again, still slow, still stiff, but moving. For once, things were quiet. The idea of letting my parents back into that peace felt like inviting a match into a dry forest. I left the letter on my desk for 2 days. When I finally opened it, I did it without thinking, like ripping off a bandage. It wasn't long. A single page written like someone trying not to edit themselves too much. It started with a strange kind of honesty. My mom said she didn't know what the right words were because she knew there weren't any. She admitted they'd stolen from me. She used that word stolen. No soft language, no borrowed or misunderstood. She said it started as a bad idea and spiraled into something cruel. That the moment they realized they could get away with it, they stopped caring about whether they should. She said watching me in court, watching me not even flinch when they pleaded was the most humiliating thing she'd ever felt and maybe the most deserved. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She asked for a conversation. I didn't answer right away. I didn't even tell Eric and Madison about the letter for a few days. When I finally did, we sat in the backyard late at night. Fire pit going. Eric just listened, nodding slowly. Madison stared at the flames for a while and said, "It's not wrong to forgive. It's only wrong if you forget." That stuck. So I called my mom. First time we'd spoken since the lawsuit. She answered like she'd been waiting by the phone. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. I wasn't even sure why I called. I guess I just needed to know if she meant what she wrote or if it was just another attempt to manipulate me back into the fold. But she didn't push. She didn't beg. She just said she was sorry over and over. Not in the performative way people do when they want something, more like she was finally letting herself feel the weight of what they'd done. She told me my dad had been quiet since the trial, ashamed, said. Grace was angry at everyone and Lucy barely left her room. She said they'd lost something bigger than money, something they might not get back. Then she said the words I never thought I'd hear from her. "We want to be a family again, but only if that's what you want, too." I didn't say yes. I didn't say no either. I told her I'd think about it. A week later, I went back to the house, not to stay, just to meet them. My uncle came with me along with Eric and Madison. I wasn't walking in blind. If it got ugly, I had people beside me who wouldn't let it slide. The house felt different, smaller. The paint more faded than I remembered. My dad was outside when we pulled up. He looked older than the last time I saw him, like the months had aged him by years. When I got out of the car, he walked over and didn't say anything at first. Then he looked me in the eye and said, "You were right." That was it. No excuses, no long speeches. Inside, the 5 of us sat in the living room. My mom made tea but didn't offer any. It was silent for a while. Then I started talking. I told them everything. About the hospital, the loneliness, the betrayal. I didn't hold back. I told them how small I felt when I saw their vacation photos. How I'd spent days wondering if I mattered at all to the people who raised me. How I trusted them even after all the small disappointments. And this was the final break. They didn't argue. They listened. For once, they just let me say what I needed to say. When I finished, my mom nodded and said, "We deserve worse. But if there's a way back, we want to take it." I told them forgiveness isn't free. I wasn't going to just let them in. If they wanted to rebuild, it would take time. Actions, not words. They agreed. No resistance, no bargaining. When we left, my dad shook my hand. My mom hugged me but didn't hold on. It felt like the first honest moment we'd had in years. Back at my uncle's house, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. Not because things were perfect, but because I finally knew where I stood. I wasn't a victim anymore. I wasn't a prisoner of anger either. I chose who I wanted to be, and the person I chose still believed in redemption, even if it had to be earned piece by piece. 3 months after the lawsuit, I almost forgot what it felt like to look over my shoulder. The noise was gone, the tension, the second guessing. I was walking again. No crutches, no cane. My life had slowly rebuilt itself into something quieter, steadier, better. I was still living at my uncle's house. My stuff was organized in bins and drawers like I was temporary. But we all knew I wasn't in a rush to leave. That house had become the one place I didn't have to watch my back. Eric and Madison had gone from cousins to constants. No one else had earned that title. My parents stayed away like they promised. They never asked for anything. Every month I got the court-ordered payment in my account, and every month I expected them to mess it up. They never did. They were chipping away at the debt, financial and otherwise, one small steady piece at a time. They sent the occasional update, not the "we miss you" kind. Just things like "your dad started at the hardware store," or "your sister Lucy got a part-time job." I didn't respond, but I read every word. I didn't hate them. I just didn't know who they were anymore. Then, on a Saturday morning in late spring, Madison sent me a message. "You're going to want to see this." She posted it. I didn't ask who. I already knew. It was a long post. No photos, no fluff. Just a straight-up confession posted publicly by my mom. She wrote everything. The theft, the Greece trip, how they used my card while I was immobile, how they laughed about it, and how the lawsuit had been the beginning of the wake-up call. She admitted they didn't even deserve a second chance, but were trying to become people who might someday. And then the part that stuck with me: we didn't expect our son to save us by suing us. But that's what he did. He stopped us from becoming people we wouldn't even recognize. This is what accountability looks like. If you've ever hurt someone who stood up to you, thank them. That's how you start again. I read it twice, 3 times. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I did. She could have sent that privately, but she wanted the world to know. She put her shame in public view, and something about that shifted things for me. She wasn't trying to buy forgiveness. She was burning the bridges behind her. A few days later, I agreed to meet them. Just dinner. Neutral ground. Uncle's backyard. I told them Eric and Madison would be there. They said they wouldn't come unless I was okay with it. That was new. My dad grilled like he always did, standing too close to the flames. My mom brought a salad no one touched. It was awkward for the first 10 minutes. Then Lucy made a joke. Eric chimed in. Madison poked at my uncle's weird playlist. And just like that, it stopped feeling like a trap. Started feeling like a chance. After dinner, while everyone was still outside, my mom pulled me into the kitchen. She looked different, smaller, maybe not physically, just like something in her head deflated. The pride, the denial. She looked at me and said, "We can't undo what we did. We know that. But if there's any space left for us in your life, we're asking, not assuming." I didn't answer right away. I looked out the window at the backyard at Eric laughing with Lucy, and my dad awkwardly petting the neighbor's dog like he was trying to look busy, and I realized I didn't need an apology anymore. I had control now. I had peace. I had people. But the intrigue came after they left. That night, Eric and I were talking in the garage when he mentioned something that made me stop mid-sentence. He said, "You know, they almost didn't go to Greece, right?" I asked what he meant. Apparently, my dad had second thoughts. He'd even tried to talk my mom out of using the card. It was my sisters who pushed it through. Grace specifically. She found the resort, booked the tickets, convinced them it would be harmless. She never apologized. She never reached out. And according to Eric, she never felt bad.